Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will be diving into a very exciting topic, creating strategic vision for your mentoring programs. 5 real-world use cases that drive business impact. This session is eligible for HRCI, SHRM, and ATD professional development credits. Now let's go ahead and meet today's speakers. First up, we have Lisa Fain. She is the CEO of Center for Mentoring Excellence. Next up, we have Todd Moran. Todd is the Chief Learning Strategist at NovoEd. And lastly, moderating today's session is Claude Werder. Claude is a Senior Vice President and Principal Analyst here at Brandon Hall Group. Before we dive into today's content, let me tell you a little bit about Brandon Hall Group and some incredible opportunities that could accelerate your career. Brandon Hall Group is a leading professional development firm that has been serving learning, talent, and HR executives worldwide for more than 30 years. We've advanced the growth and performance of millions of employees and leaders through our cloud-based platform, delivering evidence-based research, data, and certification programs that empower organizations to achieve excellence in every area of human capital management. Our impact spans more than 10 million employees and executives globally, supported by our comprehensive research library, strategic insights, and prestigious awards program. Below is a sample of the organizations that we are proud to partner with. Speaking of awards, our Excellence in Action Awards are still accepting applications until October 17th. You have about 3 more weeks for this one, but we recommend not waiting until the last minute. These are prestigious recognitions that can transform your professional profile. Beyond recognition, we have incredible learning and networking opportunities. Registration is now open for our HCM Excellence Conference happening next year, February 9th through 12th. This is where top minds and human capital management come together. We also have our upcoming BRIC events, our AI Summit on October 16th and 17th, which I'd like to add that NovoEd is sponsoring, and our Women in Leadership event on November 19th. We also invite you to participate in our research studies, and that links will be available after the webinar, or you can always visit brandonhall.com. Once the results are analyzed, all participants receive a piece of complimentary research and other exclusive benefits. All details and applications for everything I've mentioned will be available in a PDF that you'll receive within 24 hours after the webinar. We'd like to give a big thank you to today's webinar sponsor, NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd transforms learning through an integrated solution for creating, facilitating, and delivering high-impact learning experiences. Global organizations trust NovoEd to enable experiences that go beyond content and knowledge checks, integrating peer learning, feedback, practice, and application. NovoEd works with all content sources and supports all types of formal learning, including self-paced, hybrid, blended, cohort-based, one-to-one, and team-based learning. To learn more about why companies like 3M, Marriott, and Nestle use NovoEd to go beyond content and knowledge checks to drive performance readiness at scale, visit www.novoed.com to learn more. We are excited to share that at the end of today's webinar, we will be selecting one lucky raffle winner to win a free Excellence in Action program submission. Stay tuned to see if you are the lucky winner. You must be present to win. And now, just a few quick things to note. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the questions panel on your control bar. We'll be answering them throughout the session. We're also recording today's webinar, and you'll receive an email within 24 hours with a link to the recording and a PDF of the slides. The chat box is open, so please feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. Your input makes this more valuable for everyone. And now, I'd like to pass things off to Claude.
Well, thanks, Shay, and welcome everybody. Very excited to have everybody here. We have a great webinar for you, a great discussion, and let us know where you're coming in from today. And we really hope to capture a lot of your thoughts and get your questions as we go and make this very interactive. We're going to be talking about, we'll start with talking about the characteristics of mentoring to kind of level set with everyone. Talk about current state and challenges, establishing business objectives, effective scaling. We've got 3 poll questions where we're going to get your input. And we're going to intersperse that, as the title of the webinar says, with 5 use cases, really success stories in mentoring to hope. The hope there is to really give you rich examples and context on what it takes to drive successful mentoring. And of course, we'll have some key takeaways at the end and handle Q&A. And we may also handle some questions that you come up with, or any comments or successes you share as we go. So with that, let me turn it over to Lisa, who'll get us started.
Thanks so much, Claude. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see so many people from so many different places all over the world, really. So just to start us off, I think it's really important that we level set when we talk about mentoring. I often like to say that mentoring is one of the most promiscuously used words in leadership development. And so we really want to make sure that we know what we are talking about as we go forward here today. And maybe the easiest way to do that is to think about mentoring as having 3 characteristics. You'll excuse me the hiking metaphor. As somebody who lives here in the Pacific Northwest, I sort of can't help myself. But we know that a mentor is the compass and a mentee really is the seeker. There really are 3, or the learner. There really are 3 characteristics that distinguish mentoring from other modalities, and those are learning, reciprocity, and co-creation. Learning is the purpose, it's the process, it's the product of mentoring. Without learning, it might be a nice lunch, a really good cup of coffee, but it is not mentoring. It is not a developmental conversation. The other thing that distinguishes mentoring is this idea of reciprocity. We know that mentors give and mentees get, but it's true too that mentees give and mentors get. There really is this element of reciprocity and reciprocal learning that distinguishes mentoring. And then the final element is this idea of co-creation. I like to call it the funny math of mentoring. We know that in mentoring, 1 + 1 = 3. What do I mean by that? I mean that there's the mentor, there's the mentee, and then there's the mentoring relationship that the mentor and the mentee co-create together. Again, something that really distinguishes mentoring and is unique in this learning modality, that the parameters of the relationship are set by mentor and mentee. So I think with that grounding, Claude, I'll turn it back to you so we can get some input from our attendees about what their own experiences are here.
Great. Well, hopefully everybody's settled in and ready to let us know where you are in the mentoring scheme of things. Poll number 1 is a simple question. What best describes your organization's current approach to mentoring? Do you not have a formal program in place? Maybe you're tuning in to get some ideas. Do you have some scattered pilot programs without central matching or coordination? Do you have a single mentoring program for a specific use case? Multiple programs with some level of coordination? Enterprise-wide strategic mentoring initiative. Now, we realize there might be some things in between, so just pick the answer that is the best fit for you. And we look forward to seeing what the answers are. And this question is really helpful in kind of letting us understand where everybody is, so we can kind of meet you where you are.
Yeah, I love that, Claude. And maybe if there is an other that we haven't captured in the chat, just let us know what other circumstance applies to you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another opportunity for me to really encourage you to put thoughts, questions, your own experiences in the chat as we go. It really helps your fellow attendees and helps us as well. So it looks like here, about half of you have no formal program in place, which is fine, because we're going to be talking a lot about strategy and how to move forward. About 31% have scattered pilot programs. And so really it sounds like most of the audience, about 8 out of 10, are really kind of beginning your journey, which is great. And I think we'll really be able to give you some good stuff to hang on to. So let's move ahead. and turn it over to Todd. This is the first of 5 success stories or use cases that we're going to share that will kind of give you some real context and color around what good mentoring looks like and what some of the challenges are that organizations are addressing. Todd?
Thanks, Claude. I sort of chuckling to myself a little bit as we saw those responses fly up. The no and the scattered are things we hear all the time at NovoEd, and I think that's a sort of a very consistent theme. There's belief in the power of what this approach can do, mentoring, but it's sort of where to get started, how to get started, and can that be sort of programmatic and deployed across an organization. So one of the first ones we all wanted to share today is a client we've been working with for almost 4 or 5 years now, with some of their traditional programmatic cohort-based expansive learning in a whole variety of areas, really around onboarding, around leadership development, around sales enablement. And they had come to us recently and said, "Hey, how can we make the significant investments in that formal programmatic learning, that development, part of a broader strategy around continuous workforce development, and let's use mentoring to be at the heart of that." And I think this is a theme that we're going to start to see more and more as we turn the page into 26. Is investments are being made, like this organization, in named programs, new people leader. I bet everybody on the call has some form of a program like this today, of a traditional learning modality. But how do you make it sticky? How do you make it reinforced? How do you continue the development over a period of time where you might be, in this case, it's a 3-month exposure with a quarterly touch point that runs for the better part of a half year. And there is something wildly powerful to Lisa's opening about that idea of co-creation, learning, and reciprocity when you're pairing people one-to-one beyond just a consumption-based model in traditional learning. So this is really sort of an example of attaching to an existing named program of a classic learning nature, applying mentoring to that approach and watching sort of the synergistic piece, the 1 + 1 = 3. And I think this idea in this age of growing AI, and this interest of incredible efficiency gains to be had, the case study here in this organization was really keen on not losing sight of the human element. And so how do you do that? Create a parallel program of buddy, of sort of mentoring, sitting side by side this programmatic learning, and watch how that maximizing the investment that you've already made. And so just a little bit of it doesn't have to be massive. This organization has 30,000 plus people. They're operating in several countries worldwide, but you can start in a name defined fashion and be wildly effective in that approach. And so just one example here. I know, Claude, I think there's some additional research we wanted to share about what are those other key challenges folks are thinking about beyond the approach they might be taking right now.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. Mentoring is one of those things where as organizations really focus on getting out of learning that's one size fits all into personalized, contextualized learning, mentoring is really great at that. And we're finding that about 70% of organizations are at least considering mentoring programs. But most of them, as with our audience today, are at a fairly beginning level and just getting started. And the challenges that organizations face kind of look like this. The biggest challenge that people face is the pairing the mentors and the mentees across different locations and cultures. And what we found is it's such an overwhelming problem that once they get to the point where they're having more success in pairing them, it's not always easy to actually get the program started and have those relationships really take hold. So the first thing is to really understand how to pair the mentors and mentees, and then tailoring the software you have to the organizational needs, which we'll talk more about. And then it kind of about another 65% focus on trying to have system-generated prompts for sessions and tasks and kind of automating that. And then there's obviously the problem we always have with learning programs is assessing program effectiveness. And then about half of organizations focus on strengthening employee bonds to the organization. And I think all these use cases really touch on that at least a little bit. And then establishing role-specific mentoring is, I think, when people, the program is getting off the ground a little bit And now they're really trying to fine tune what they're doing.
No,
So
Claude, can I just
sure.
jump in on one here that stands out to me? Lisa, you and I have talked a lot about this. I read that first one at 81% response rate. And I think of the phrase you often, I don't know if you coined, but certainly talk a lot about with your interaction with large enterprises of this pair and pray, I think is the phrase, right? And
Yeah.
it's a real challenge, not just the sort of the technical, how do you would associate for multiple geos and time zones and seniority levels, but then it's sort of once made, what you're just sending them on their way, and that feels very risky from an investment standpoint for organizations.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, Todd, because the matching doesn't end at the matching. And
Right.
really making sure that once the pair is made, that they're equipped with the resources is really, really critical in success. And it's where a lot of mentoring programs fall short.
Okay, let's move on to another poll question and see where you stand. We talked about the challenges. Now we'd like to know what your primary business objectives are for being interested in mentoring if you're not actually doing it. And we've given you 5 choices and then give you the chance to put some additional detail in the chat. Option A, improving retention and reducing turnover as a business objective, or accelerating onboarding for new hires, building a leadership pipeline and succession planning, upskilling and reskilling for critical capabilities, strengthening culture and employee belonging. Or as I mentioned, if it's something else, something in between, a combination, please let us know. Drop some comments in the chat that we can all take a look at. So it'll be interesting. Once people answer, I can give a few details on what some of our research shows and what our case study analysis from our Excellence Award program shows. But really interested in seeing what people have to say here.
Yeah, Claude, I feel like it's unfair that we force people into a single selection here, because as we're seeing some chat from Dolores and others, that hey, maybe it's all of these that we're trying to drive towards.
And it could be. And I thought actually long and hard about making this all, you can choose any of them. What tends to happen then, though, is we see that like 80% of people are thinking about all of them. So I figured they could tell us that, and we could get a sense of where people are, and what some of their specific objectives are.
Yeah, as you're looking as the numbers are rolling in, Claude, I think the other point to make here is that, when mentoring is a check the box just for mentoring itself, it's really missing the mark. Like really, really
Sure.
important to look at the potential for mentoring to link to these business objectives, because not only will it help justify the investment of time and resources, but it really, really moves the needle on a lot of different objectives from a people perspective and from a business outcome perspective as well.
Yeah, the other thing that's nice about this question is it kind of gives you a wide range of the things that mentoring can do. So if you only are working on one thing, there's so much more you can get out of it. So the most frequent answer, 28%, just barely the most frequent, is for upskilling, reskilling for critical capabilities. And then 23% focused on strengthening culture and building the leadership pipeline.
Yeah, Lauren has a great comment in the chat too that I'll just share for those who aren't able to see it,
Sure.
which is that their current mentoring program is designed to provide front line teams and folks in the entry leadership pipeline with an opportunity to be paired with a seasoned leader from across the organization. So they're really embracing this idea of cross-functional pairings, and the idea is to develop business acumen, interpersonal, and leadership skills. So great point, Lauren. Thanks for sharing that.
Great point, and please keep those coming. We'll keep an eye on the chat and hopefully include a lot more comments from all of you. All right, let's move on to another success story. Todd, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, it's a shame that Lauren, you make that comment. The piece that I wanted to share today, another client that we've been working with over the past year or so here, is trying to meet that exact kind of construct. And it was a little bit of what Sean put in the chat as well. I think Sean, you had it as A and C were yours, right? About reducing turnover, increasing retention, and building this pipeline. What Lauren's talking about. The challenge for this organization was perhaps even steeper. How do we double the size of our organization to meet the demand of new product services offerings in the market inside 5 years? Learning's not going to do it alone. Just succession planning in a box is not going to do it alone. And so they turned to us with this desire to say, hey, can mentoring be a path to allow us to solve here? Wild complexity around matching, we're helping to solve that with our AI-powered solution. The piece, and this is a really important one in that top right box, and Lisa mentioned this, is it's one thing to establish a really well-defined mentoring program and to generate folks into that pipeline and to push people through it at scale. But if they're not well equipped to execute, to know what they're doing in those sessions, to provide the basis for the learning, the reciprocity, the co-creation, oftentimes it will fall flat. And so we put a lot of thought and worked very closely with this client about baking in that guidance for both mentor and mentee into what does exemplary look like? What does success look like in those sessions to maximize that experience? And then, and this is an important one for the organizationally led entities, right? There's inherent benefit to the mentor and the mentee, but the organization needs an ROI as well. And so can we have things like universal pulse checks that are showing the progression of how these pairs and continuation of development are happening over time, which was a huge focus for this organization. So when they think about trying to take a big, hairy, audacious goal, like doubling the size of your organization, when you think about a talent development arc, mentoring should, and I think would argue for this session today, be a critical strategic pillar in that. And this is certainly evidence of watching that come to life. So I know this is a little bit earlier days in their deployment. I think we'll hopefully find Claude another opportunity to come back and talk about some of the really defined metrics of success that came out of this endeavor.
All right. Anything you want to add, Lisa, or anyone else? Or feel free to comment on this in the chat. If not, we'll move on. Lisa's got a story she wants to share from a global manufacturing company. Lisa?
Yeah, thanks, Claude. So this client is as it says, a global manufacturing client, US based, with an increasingly global workforce, and the population of employees around the globe are growing at a level that is beginning to match what's happening in the US in terms of numbers. So the leadership is also newly dispersed, whereas in the past, it was really solely US focused. Really, leadership is now co-located all around the world. Newly hired employees represent visible and identity and diversity by identity, but less diversity at the senior levels, and there's significant attrition that was happening with the more diverse employees at the more junior levels. And the organization, to its credit, really saw that as an issue and was committed to creating a more diverse and representative workforce at the more senior levels. Additionally, the corporate culture in this organization was really strong, and they wanted to make sure that it was inclusive and also that it translated across geography and across identity. So they really saw mentoring as a way to address that, and specifically targeting mentoring for its more junior, diverse employees. And they were looking at race, gender, sexual orientation, and then geographic diversity as well. One of the things that was really amazing about it was, in terms of intent to, of course, to increase employee satisfaction, but also to improve the cultural competency of the leaders, the mentors as well. And so if you move to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened. So we designed a cohort-based model that there was hand matching that was done across cultures and geography. And one of the interventions that we put in place was an ongoing coaching and data analysis twice during the 12-month mentoring cycle. So we would have a member of our team interview and provide just-in-time coaching and data analysis, separate phone calls for the mentor and the mentee, where we were able to really provide that just-in-time coaching that made a big difference, but also to gather data, both quantitative and qualitative data, that was really useful in determining the success of the program. We did have in-person training, and then one virtual live training once the mentoring initiative became more global. Overall, the adoption by the senior leaders was really, really exciting. And in fact, one of the most senior leaders decided that he was going to require that everybody on his team demonstrate that they were investing in their own learning and the learning of somebody else on the team. They didn't require that it be mentoring, but mentoring was one of those options. And because learning is the purpose, the process, and the product of mentoring, it really created additional commitment both inside and outside of the program to mentoring. Overall, there's greater than 90% satisfaction rate by mentors and mentees, many repeat mentors and mentees, and many mentees early on who came back to be mentors. One of the most exciting things was to see the increased exposure for employees at all levels of the organization, exposure to different perspectives, but also exposure to the way things were happening in other parts of the organization that really spurred innovation and more efficient and effective business communication and business results as a result too. So overall, a really successful initiative that both increased the diversity at the more senior levels, as well as to strengthen the corporate culture across locations.
This is oh, go ahead, Todd.
No, Claude, just it makes me that this idea of the exposure piece, I think it's a wildly underestimated dynamic that folks are not putting enough emphasis on. We talk about, this, whether this dynamic of job hugging is a truly universal thing just in the US or across the globe right now, that there'll come a time in the not too distant future will things, I think, will invert, and employees will be looking to other places. So what endears them to an organization, right? It's exposure to others in the org. It's a sense of
Yes.
belonging, a sense of being paired and part of something bigger. And it's really hard to get that without the sense of sort of human connection and that opportunity for exposure.
Yeah, I love that. That's true both from a career development standpoint and from an innovation standpoint, right? I mean, the truth is, the more you're exposed to, the more the universe of dots that you can connect. And so it's great both from a people perspective, but also from a business results perspective. Claude, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. No problem at all. What I was going to talk about was, I think everything we're talking about here, especially the inclusion, communication, the collaboration, it really, I think, demonstrates the difference in mentoring and traditional learning, right? So many learning programs lack engagement. People feel like they're just being talked to. They can't relate to it. They don't feel like they have a connection to it. They see it as something that's taking them away from their work. But when you have close personal relationships like this, and you're creating this sense of belonging, learning becomes so much more than learning. It becomes part of the overall culture, and that drives the business benefits that we're all looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that is so exciting about mentoring and so powerful about it is that it really is aligned with, when it's done well, it's aligned with the principles of adult learning, which is about relationality, about applicability, about interactivity, about customization. It really makes learning come to life. It is a partnership, right? You've got to have the information from the learning, but you have to also be able to have this applicability of the learning, which really amplifies that learning and personalizes it, contextualizes it, if you will.
And the activation theme, right? At least I think that's part of we have a lot of clients that think about the combination, Claude, your point about the learning, but then what's the reinforcement mechanism? What's the sort of bring it to life in a real world context and setting? And boy, that's really hard to do without a human element sort of driving and guiding and shaping and helping to understand that sort of reinforcing mechanism that is, still the pedagogy of iterative application, space learning, but including that sort of on the job style human connection, not from an outside coach who might have little to no knowledge of your business, your organization, your goals, your 5 big rocks, but for folks that have lived, walked, breathed many a mile in the organization, arguably, to help you get there.
You know, we touched on this, but I just want to touch it on a little bit more. Is the other thing about mentoring is the mutual learning between the mentee and the mentor. I've been in a lot of mentoring programs, and I've spent some time fairly recently in mentoring younger employees and younger people in a certain profession, and I felt most of the time that I was really learning more than they were because they were giving me perspective into their world and their life that I really, you know, with my children being grown now and everything, I really wasn't exposed to as much. And I feel like I got as much or more from it. And when you have both sides of the equation, the mentees and the mentors really coming away with really rich experiences, it just builds the whole organization and makes for better people as well as people who have learned specific skills.
Yeah, the data backs that up too, Claude. There's all sorts of research about how mentoring elevates things for mentors as well. They become better leaders, they become more culturally competent, they get additional perspective, they have more satisfaction in their own careers. It's not just the feel good of giving back, which so many of us think about when we think about mentoring. There actually is data about the business performance and the career satisfaction and the competency and the skill building that mentoring provides for mentors as well. So I'm really glad you mentioned that as a feature.
I think it's all the outcomes and impact, right, Claude, that are on the next slide that you wanted to share with folks from the award winning that we just rattled off to an extent.
Yeah, let me do that, and then I want to touch on a comment that Melanie made. But yes, here is some data from our case study analysis. So these are award-winning programs in mentoring from 2025, and we analyze kind of the commonalities. And so we found that the number one outcome and impact was improved retention rate among participants. And I think that's because of the overall value that mentoring brings, not just in any skills they're developing, but those connections that we've been talking about. And then 71% led to advancement or promotion of participants. And there was also increasing leadership bench strength, increased engagement scores, really everything as learning and talent professionals that we're looking for. A good percentage of the organizations involved in mentoring and executing at a high level are really getting the kind of results that the business is really been looking for and been lacking in a lot of the traditional programs. So I wanted to touch on a question from Melanie before we move on, and that's been how have we seen mentoring programs in sales enablement environments become successful and activate their skills? I can take, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Claude, and I'll fill in, please.
Yeah, actually, I would say probably about roughly 40 to 50% of the mentoring programs that we looked at are actually related to sales enablement. I think mentoring is a great way of driving sales because, you know, besides the numbers of sales, there's a lot of conflicts that salespeople need to work through, a lot of pressures that they need to work through, as well as skills. And having a mentor that they can really relate to, I think it's a great way, a great use for mentoring is sales enablement. So we see a lot of that in the programs that we evaluate.
Yeah, I'll just add to that effective mentoring relationships really provide three functions, right? There's a safety net, there's a sounding board, and there's a laboratory. And when you think about sales environments, you can really see how this would be a benefit, right? When it's very easy in sales training to say, go do the things, you know, follow step A, B, C, and then D and E will arise if you have enough activity, right? But the truth is we know that there are people who are just uncomfortable with certain conversations where there's a lack of motivation in some context or specific contexts, where there needs to be some practice or some role playing, or you need a chance to really have a place to share what your concerns, your roadblocks, your obstacles, or even where your strengths are and how you can further develop them. Also, we know that successful salespeople are people who attune their sales to their own styles and their strengths, and mentoring really helps mentees discover that as well. So I love thinking about those three functions when you think about a sales environment, because I think you can really start to see the applicability, Melanie, and thinking about, okay, mentoring will provide that safety net, right? A place to try things out, a place to
Right.
share, a sounding board, a place to share where your concerns are, and then a laboratory to really kind of role play and see what else might be working. As well, don't forget about the accountability that mentoring provides that isn't always present just in kind of tracking and other kinds of sales enablement programs.
Yeah, at least the other
These
piece
are,
I'd
oh, go ahead. Sorry, Todd.
no, Claude, just to echo to Melanie, that we've seen a lot with our clientele is unique to sales enablement. There's so much around subtlety, around nuance, and around ambiguity. And so thinking about just being able to kind of consume a sort of process-oriented piece, or hey, here's how you log, or here's how you produce a proposal template, or here's how you position a particular pricing model. There is so much uniqueness, I think, in those approaches that the addressing that with a human dynamic tied to the kind of recurring nature in a programmatic way of mentoring becomes so powerful to sort of unlocking it. It's not just consume a bunch of content or and then be able to execute in that particular function because of those three unique elements to that role.
So we talked a lot about outcomes and potential impact. And so let's take a look for a minute on what the biggest challenges are in scaling mentoring programs and getting those kind of results. This is our third and final poll question. Again, we're asking you to pick one, but feel free to put multiple answers in the chat. So what's your biggest challenge? Is it lack of executive buy-in and sponsorship, or difficulty measuring, low participant engagement, absence of a technology platform to manage programs, insufficient resources, budget, staff time, etc., or unclear alignment with business priorities? There's a lot of potential things. So my guess is there'd be people with a lot of these, and the numbers will probably be pretty low, but it's always interesting to see. And then we'd also look in the chat and see how many people have multiple of these that apply to them. So I'll give you a few more seconds to make your choices. I'm guessing it's going to be, top answer is going to be absence of a technology platform. We'll see.
We hear that one a lot, Claude, for certain.
That was not it. The biggest answer, 42% actually, insufficient resources, budget, staff, and time, which of course may lead indirectly to that, to a technology issue or other issues. Interestingly, the lack of executive buy-in and sponsorship is fairly low, which is great to see, because support and of mentoring starts at the top and works itself down. So that's great. But I think anybody have any thoughts about the resources and how organizations can try to battle that?
Yeah, Claude, I'm happy to weigh in here to start. And again, obviously we have a point of view on this at NovoEd. Certainly technology is not a solve, but it can be part of a broader solution. I would argue, and this is having walked many years on being on the side of many of our attendees running large scale L&D talent HR teams, several years at Schneider Electric, is this downward pressure on budget, on FTE count, on staff, on systems and tools. And so, thinking about how technology can help accelerate that or augment that, because if it's a manual matching process, if it's a manual intervention, if it's a pulling constant spreadsheets and a cobbled together approach, it almost becomes a non-starter. A non-starter should be able to do it at scale. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to solve. And we recognize a fairly big gap in the marketplace around that is technology will not solve all of it for you. But I would argue that it has a very meaningful approach to get at folks that responded with having insufficient resources. It's a way to amplify, to accelerate the types of impact you can have in the organization, even when there is that downward pressure on the sizing of the teams, the scope of what you're executing, the increasing demands and ask of a global workforce population you're trying to skill.
Yeah, and it's
So-
got to be the right technology. I mean, a spreadsheet ain't going to cut it. It's just going to make it more difficult, right? So when you've got to be thinking about something that's really holistic and providing, just-in-time resources as well as, the matching and additional avenues for accountability and tracking and those kind of things as well. So I think it's really, really good point, Todd.
Okay, we've got two more success stories to go through. So let me first share the last piece of data. We talked about the challenges. Here's what we found are the key elements of success. And right at the top, 100% of organizations that we studied had executive senior leadership involvement. That's why it was so good to see such a low percentage seeing that as a problem. One-on-one mentoring sessions, also almost everybody did that if they had some level of success. Other things that are deemed important is having virtual and online sessions as well as live sessions, in-person sessions, piloting to test out programs, goal setting to make sure that the mentoring programs stay focused. And you'll hear this, I think, in the next two success stories. Promoting equitable access and diverse participation is a big part of it as well. So I'm gonna go through the last couple of case studies. But before we do, just feel free to share any of your successes, challenges, insights. We'd love to hear more from you and maybe talk a little bit about that in our Q&A portion. Also, let us know right now if you would, what else you would like us to address, what maybe we've missed that you'd like to hear something more about. So we'll look to mentoring programs now at two very different organizations, a food and beverage manufacturer and a revenue cycle division of a major healthcare company. So this first one is a mid-sized food and beverage manufacturer. They faced a big challenge. How could thousands of employees, they had about 7,000, and they were scattered across multiple plants and shifts. Many didn't have corporate email. How do they access meaningful development opportunities? The company's cultural transformation really demanded more than just traditional mentoring approaches that historically underserved women and frontline workers. That was a big thing for them. So what they came up with directly advances the strategic priorities of engagement and leadership effectiveness, but it also embodied core operating principles. So marrying those two were really important. So by moving traditional barriers and enabling self-selected growth relationships, the program ensured that every employee, from the manufacturing floor to the corporate offices, could participate in continuous learning. So the program was launched at the company's 2023 Spring Strategy Conference. So it's been going on about 2.5 years. Program strategically leveraged technology, as we talked about, including single sign-on, mobile apps for field employees, and connectivity with the HRIS system, as well as other technology, to ensure accessibility across all areas of the company, the corporate office, plants, field operations. So this was a 9-month structured relationship between mentor and mentee, and it exceeded expectations. In fact, it attracted more mentors than mentees initially, and drove notable participation from women and historically marginalized groups. The platform analytics and their technology revealed high engagement rates and across different areas of the company, different sites of the company, while qualitative feedback highlighted meaningful professional growth. So the leaders recognized and the senior leadership recognition of those in the mentoring program and multi-unit adoption of mentoring validated the program's impact in democratizing development across the organization. That was one of the overriding goals. So the big picture impact, what started as a simple mentoring program became a transformative learning journey, and it reshaped the company's entire approach to talent development. The company discovered really a fundamental truth, right? That success begins with truly understanding how your employees communicate. The company literally met their people where they were. The learning team hit the road. They conducted site visits across all company locations in every shift pattern, sometimes in the middle of the night. they weren't just recruiting participants into the learning and mentoring program, they were building bridges to employees who'd never had the access that they needed before. So mentoring's now become a cornerstone of the L&D and the business strategy. And the journey taught the company and learning leaders that when you combine genuine understanding with innovative delivery, not only do you have great learning and mentoring, but also becomes a catalyst for transformation of the organization. See if there's any comments. Nope, not so far. Feel free to keep dropping those in and we'll handle them at the end. Todd or Lisa, any questions or anything you wanted to add to that?
Maybe a good time to bring in Oriana offered a good question, not explicit to this case study, Claude, but Lisa, I know you probably have a point of view on this, and I certainly have some thoughts. But for mentors, whether it's a program of this scale or it's something of a different size that you're envisioning, how do you keep the time component? How do you keep it doable? I think is where she's driving at when it comes to the mentor not having to find extra time to sort of to do that work. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you're certainly not alone, Oriana, in finding and having this experience. I hear this a lot. The truth is that effective mentoring does require time. I think there's a couple different keys to having mentors, find the time to do it. One is, we often think that the best mentors go in it solely for the learning of the mentees. We touched on this a little bit before, but this goes to the intentionality of learning for the mentors. So one of the ways to make it a both and for your mentors is to solicit what their own learning needs and learning goals are, so that the mentoring, when you end up with doing this matching, it can be them working on their own development as well as the development of the mentees. A lot of times, we will encourage more explicitly reciprocal relationship where the mentor is both the mentee and the mentor, right? More of a peer relationship, if you will, or what we call a complementary mentoring relationship, to make it so that the mentor is also working on their own development. The truth is, if you have a mentor who is unwilling to find any time to invest in the development, then they may not be the right mentor at this time. But I think what you will find, and certainly what we've found from clients, and Todd and Claude, I'm curious your thoughts on this, is those are the mentors who want to participate in round 2 or round 3 once they have seen what the generative impact is. What the generative impact is for other folks. Frederick says here, 15 minutes a week is 1 hour a month. Yeah, Frederick, you make a great point. Don't encourage that it has to be perfect communication.
Yeah.
It has to be good communication, and mentoring moments can often be as powerful as full-on mentoring conversations. And in fact, I think this is another great point, is because it is a co-created relationship, as long as it's meeting minimum expectations and it's not, I don't have any time for you, or all asynchronous communication or that kind of thing. If the mentor and the mentee are in agreement as to the level of commitment that they want to have in the way that they're going to communicate, that's a really good way to do that as well. I don't know, Todd, do you have a additional answer or more you want to add to that?
No, I love where Frederick's going with that, because that we see this a lot too in terms of formalized learning programs. Same argument could be made. I can remember the Josh Bersin quote from 15 years ago when he was at Deloitte, talking about the average workforce employee only has 24-hour minutes a month to learn. How are they going to do all this upskilling? And so the point is, the point of entry doesn't need to look cumbersome. And so I love this idea of sort of short form, as long as the reciprocity, the mutual agreement, Lisa, is there, is that it doesn't need to be this cumbersome effort. And so, Oriana, when you think about applying a sort of mentoring dynamic to either a named learning program already, it's part of what they're doing. And if that learning is done right, it's part of their job. So it doesn't have to become an addition to. And if there is going to be a time commitment, which I agree there should be, it can, the point of entry can be smaller to start, or you could put them into a wave too. So I love the thinking all around there.
Agreed. All right, we're headed toward the end. I want to hit one more case study. We'll try to keep this one a little short. This final one focuses on a revenue cycle division of a major healthcare company. They had 1,100 employees and new hires that required up to 90 days to work independently. And so they needed urgent transformation, and they used a combination of a on-the-job training program and mentoring to get there. So they needed to shift from really marginal performance in terms collection of revenue from insurance claims and turn that into best of nation performance. So as I mentioned, they had on-the-job training to dramatically reduce time to independence while creating mentor development opportunities for the staff as well. So on the design and the delivery, the company created a 6-month mentoring partnership. It required 102 trained mentors to demonstrate 100% skill proficiency. So this wasn't one of those situations where you can just touch have a very short set of conversations. They went all in. They took a pretty intensive approach, but it did have really amazing results. They had a 41% reduction in time to independence across departments. They had a 33% ROI, almost $700,000 in annual benefits attributed to the mentoring program, and maybe most importantly, an 83% retention rate for participants compared to less than 60% for the rest of the organization. So the bottom line was that the program validated that strategic mentoring investments deliver measurable operational excellence while fostering human connection. So they shortened and steepened the learning curve, but they also created structured mentoring to help people along. And the combination of those two really delivered the results.
Claude, what I find fascinating about those last couple of points from your side, this is a challenge we often get. Clients say, what about the operational efficiency of the folks, the mentees that I'm asking to then participate in these programs? And make no mistake about it, there is a commit there. There is a commit to move forward. But if you think in a holistic way, and this whole webinar, right, is about the strategic vision of this, what's the scale to be gained? What's the benefit to be gained, the impact to be gained on the other side of this if you can execute? Yes, there'll be some moment of potential operational removal from sitting on a line or a production setting or on the shop floor if you're in that type of setting or in a retail environment or just as a pure play knowledge worker. But the sort of amplified definitive business impact that you're playing forward is so palpable, and especially if you can start thinking about doing it at scale. It's not just for the select few. At least I know you and I talk a lot about this. Can we think about way we've thought about democratizing leadership development, Claude, with all of the research that Brandon Hall has been doing in the themes these past few years? Let's make the argument. Maybe it's mentoring for all. Could we create that type of a dynamic? Because the business impact on the other side is so potentially massive in return.
All right, I want to leave a little time for questions and any other comments from the audience. So here's some key takeaways we put together for you. We can maybe riff on this just for a couple of minutes and we'll announce our raffle winner and then take a couple questions. Anything that sticks out here for you, Lisa or Todd, that you want to talk about?
It's all super important. And I think thinking about it in terms of business objectives, right? And keeping the main thing is to keep the main thing. And the main thing is always, what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve here? If you want to have the executive spot, if you want to get to bullet number 2, you got to do it through bullet number 1 here as well, right? So you making sure that you're understanding what the business priorities are. There is all sorts of data. If you have an organization that is motivated by the head, there is a lot of data out there to support all sorts of myriad of different business objectives when you're looking for executive sponsorship. Similarly, if it's heart or hand, there's all sorts of other examples as well. I usually recommend kind of appealing to all 3 of those when you're looking for executive sponsorship, but also remembering that when you have a technology solution, that the technology, as it says here, enables scale, continuing to have the ability to make the technology work for you, right? To incorporate these learning best practices, to do more so you can move it from pair and prey to something that really begins to meet those business objectives through tracking, through accountability, through providing resource and having an avenue for feedback is really, really, really critical. What would you add, Todd?
the one that stands out to me, and maybe this, I think there's nothing wrong with a little bit of sort of provocative back and forth, and not so much for us. I think we come from similar mindsets in terms of the power of mentoring, and Claude, all the research that proves that out. But maybe it's to the folks that are sort of listening, and it's this idea that evolution is expected. This last bullet, while start somewhere, and that I think that's our recommendation. But I would also challenge this mindset. I can think back to when I was in and reporting to the North American CEO at Schneider Electric some 15 years ago. We had 35,000 employees across the US, and there was a mentoring program in place. Guess who it was for? Top 50 employees in the US. And so yes, the technology has come a country mile since then. We think NovoEd is doing a huge part of helping to solve for that. But does it have to be just a select few out of the gate? If you've got sort of the tech, the tools, the systems, the mindset in place to say, couldn't this be broader? Couldn't this be bigger across the org? That's maybe the challenge I would leave with folks. So yes, start somewhere. I think that's important. But also we can flip this on its head a little bit. It doesn't just have to be for the high posts. It doesn't have to be for the select. It can be for the grander population. And if our goal at the end of the day is to transform our workforces and make them future ready, then we should be thinking about them as that. The entirety of the workforce, not a subset.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Well put.
Yeah. I was just going to add to that,
Oh, go ahead.
we're often thinking about a cohort-based model, right? And cohorts are really useful when you're starting because you've got the tracking. But, if you've got the right solution for providing the resources and the tracking, it doesn't have to be a cohort-based solution either. You can very easily establish a mentoring culture by providing resources to mentors and mentees who are forming more organically so that the effectiveness of their relationship is elevated as well. So there is a both and here that's really, really important.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate that. Real quick, we'll announce the winner of our raffle, Shay, and then we'll wrap up. We probably got just a couple minutes for questions.
Great, thank you, Claude. I'm thrilled to share that Melanie Mickenville has won a complimentary Excellence in Action program submission. Congratulations, Melanie, and we'll be reaching out shortly with more details.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have a lot of time for questions, but if anybody has any last minute questions they want to throw in there, I'll leave you with the one that we do have. And it talks about if mentoring should be a key component of one's talent development or people strategy, what critical problems does it solve for enterprises? And we've touched a lot about that, but maybe that's a good way to wrap up at a high level is just kind of reprising what are some of the real solutions for an enterprise that mentoring delivers.
We talked already about exposure, but I think this is a really important place to reiterate that as well. Exposure to people, resources, opportunities, exposure to ideas, exposure to new avenues of innovation, exposure for the organization to talent that it may not otherwise have been able to see in a large organization, right? But also the possibility for cultural transformation due to mentoring cannot, to me, be overstated. It is when you start to when you have a mentoring culture, you have this ripple effect that really is palpable, and I think makes a huge, huge, huge difference.
Yeah, the two others, Lisa, I know we've talked a lot about this and working with a lot of our clients, that idea of and Lauren opened to it, I think, in the commentary. I know she's since left, but this idea of the leadership pipeline, it solves in a very unique way for that in terms of strengthening and bolstering and building that. And then also this not to be forgotten, because I think it was Claude, the number 2 driving business impact from all of your excellence award studies of attrition and disengagement, right? And equating to reduction in turnover, increases in retention. And there are real hard dollars to be saved that sit behind those. When people say, yes, it's not just for the feel good, it's not just for the benefit and the professional development of the individuals involved, mentor, mentee, but what's the org getting out of it? Well, a massive reduction in turnover, an incredible bolstering of its pipeline and succession planning. These are mission critical pieces that I think we should all be thinking about.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us today. Just really quick, I want to promote some upcoming NovoEd events, again, related to mentoring in November. There'll be one on best practices to build the case for mentoring, 7 proven ways to align mentoring with business outcomes and secure executive support. So that was kind of building on some of the topics we had today. And then in December, they'll have another one, designing, scaling, and sustaining mentoring programs, 5 steps from pilot success to entry-wide impact. And with that, I just want to thank everybody, our sponsor NovoEd, Todd and Lisa, and all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. Thank you so much. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope to see you on another Brandon Hall Group webinar very soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day and a great rest of the week.